missed again. Celebrate me, what a loss. Yes, my father was. When adolescent years had come, who helped me understand. And when the winning point was scored, who in victory raised my hand. And when I hung my head in shame, was there to lift it up. Yes, my Father was. My heavenly Father has always been there for my earthly one was gone, yeah. He's taking care of me, and I only want to be just like him. Now that I'm a full-grown man who can wipe my tears away, and who's on the other end when I lift my heart to pray, and who's always by my side to help me make it through. Yes, my Father is my heavenly Father. Yes, he is. Yes, my Father is. Who was there when I first opened up my eyes? And who was there to heal the hurt when I first learned to ride? And who never missed again? Celebrate me, what a loss. Yes, my Father was. When adolescent years had come, who helped me understand. And when the winning point was scored, who in victory raised my hand. And when I hung my head in shame, was there to lift it up. Yes, my Father was. My heavenly Father has always been there for my earthly one was gone, yeah. He's taking care of me, and I only want to be just like him. Now that I'm a full-grown man who can wipe my tears away, and who's on the other end when I lift my heart to pray, and who's always by my side to help me make it through. Yes, my Father is my heavenly Father is. Yes, he is. Yes, my Father is. and who was there to heal the hurt when I first learned to ride, and who never missed a game, celebrate me won or lost. Yes, my father was. When adolescent years had come, who helped me understand, and when the winning point was scored, who in victory raised my hand, and when I hung my head in shame, was there to lift it up. Yes, my Father was. My heavenly Father has always been there for my earthly one was gone, yeah. He's taking care of me, and I only want to be just like him. Now that I'm a full-grown man who can wipe my tears away, and who's on the other end when I lift my heart to pray, and who's always by my side to help me make it through. Yes, my Father is, my heavenly Father is.
Good morning and welcome to Goodwill Baptist Church. I am Dorita Miller, your church announcer. Our pastor is Reverend Dr. Booker T. Sears Jr. We are so glad that you have chosen this place of worship to honor the Lord's name with us. If you are new to this church, we would like to thank you for worshiping with us, and we warmly welcome you into Goodwill as our brothers and our sisters in Christ.
For fathers and dads and stepdads and foster dads, amen. There was something that I read in the text today. I'll get to that a little bit later. But I want to just make sure that we all know that we are in the house of the Lord. And when we are in the house of the Lord, the scriptures declare that we should enter with gladness in our hearts, with a praise in our hearts. So, amen. Is that all right that we can say amen today, that we can say thank you, God, today, that we can give God all the praise, for it is truly due unto God. Amen. Amen. So good to see you. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy holy name. God, we just thank you so much for waking us up this morning, for starting us on our way. God, We praise you, God, that we enter into your house, God. We want to acknowledge that you are truly God all by yourself, God. God, now take your rightful place as the head of this worship service, God. It's all because of you, God, that we live and have our being. God, now, God, we want to just give you all the praise. We lift your name up high. God, we'll be so careful to say thank you on this day. God, we thank you for being our heavenly Father, and we thank you for our earthly fathers. It is on this day that we again and can never say enough. Thank you. We love you. And it is in Jesus the Christ that we lift this petition. Amen. Amen. Pastor will come at this time.
As we come to this moment, as we enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise, we take a moment each Sunday for self-reflection, to take an introspective look, to prepare our hearts to worship God. And to pray that he has cleansed us. We pray for cleansing. This song inspired from the words of David. We're gonna sing it, and eventually it'll be like our best. We'll come in asking God to search us and try us and cleanse us. Search me, O God, and know my heart today. Try me, O Savior, know my thoughts, I pray. See if there be some wicked way in me. Cleanse me from every sin and set me free. I praise thee, Lord, for cleansing me from sin. Fulfill thy word and make me pure within. Fill me with fire where once I burned with shame. Grant my desire to magnify my name. Lord, take my life and make it wholly thine. Fill my poor heart with thy great love divine. Take all my will, my passion safe and pride. I now surrender, Lord, in thee me abide. O Holy Ghost, I humbly plead. Amen. We ask God to prepare our hearts that we may worship him. Amen.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, Doc, for leading us into our introspective chant. Amen, amen. We have reached the opportunity to hear God's word in song, and let us hear God's word as written in the holy book of the Lamb. Amen. Let us turn in our Bibles to Psalm 3. It'll be on your screens. Psalm 3. We'll be reading from the New Revised Standard Version of the Bible. Psalm 3, all 8 verses. And let us begin, if we could stand to honor God's word. It is on your screen or is in your hands. Amen. Psalm 3. A psalm from David. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying to me, there is no help for you in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cry out aloud to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy hill. I lie down and sleep. I wake again, for the Lord sustains me. I am not afraid of 10,000s of people who have set themselves against me all around. Rise up, O Lord, deliver me, O my God. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Deliverance belongs to the Lord. May your blessings be on your people. May we have a blessing to reading God's word, and truly may the blessing be in those who dare enough and bold enough to follow God's word. Amen. Amen. Let us remain standing as Pastor comes to lead us on our congregational hymn.
As we gather today is a triune day, I guess. Well, it's 2 for you and 3 for me. 4 things, well, 3. Today is Father's Day. Today is the Lord's Day. Amen. And on Wednesday, we will be observing Juneteenth. That day, 2 years after the war had ended, and people were still enslaved because the word had not reached them in Texas. Amen. Let's observe it. Amen. This is our 4th of July. We were not set free as African Americans on July 4th, 1776. And those in Texas were not set free on January the 1st, 1863, when Lincoln read the Emancipation Proclamation. But I can imagine when General George Granger reached Galveston, Texas, and announced to them that they were henceforth and forever free. What jubilation that must have been. I'm gonna lay down my burden down, way down, way down. I'm gonna lay down my burden down, to study war no more. I ain't gonna 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 study war no more. They're gonna take off those old raggedy slave clothes. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down, way down, on church, way down. I'm gonna put on my long white robe down to study war no more. I'm gonna put on war no more. I ain't gonna study 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 war no more. And while you're standing, can't you imagine you've been working 2 years longer than you should have? And then the word comes that you're henceforth and forever free. I'm free. Praise the Lord. I'm free. No longer bound. No more chains holding me. My soul is resting. It's just a blessing. Praise the Lord. Can't you imagine them? Hallelujah. I'm free. Somebody hollered from way over on the other side of the plantation. I am free. Oh, praise the Lord. I'm free. No longer bound. Oh, no more chains holding me. My soul is resting. It's just a blessing. Oh, praise the Lord. Hallelujah. I'm free. Somebody heard an echo way across on another plantation. I am free. Praise the Lord, I'm free. No longer bound. No more chains holding me. My soul is resting. It's just a blessing. Oh, praise the Lord. Hallelujah, I'm free. Can you imagine what it must have been on that day? Free. Free. God bless you all. Please be seated.
Amen. As Dr. Sears is always fond of football analogies, he pulled one out of the playbook to, amen, amen. Was it timely and ready? Amen. He mixed it in. Amen. He got Juneteenth in there. Amen. Thank you, Doc. Again, as we prepare, we will be receiving our announcements from this morning as Deacon Boston Cherry comes. Let me just make sure I want to say Happy Father's Day again to all the fathers, amen, that are here. I want to say Happy Father's Day to all this. This is what I saw in the chat this morning, and it blessed my heart. Happy Father's Day to the stepfathers who stepped up in place of fathers who did not. I want to say Happy Father's Day to the godfathers who, in their examples, were godly fathers to those who did not have. I want to say Happy Father's Day to the neighborhood dads who told you to step up and walk right, and even sometimes in the old days they could put a belt to your behind just like your own dad could. I want to say Happy Father's Day to the teachers who taught us in spite of us not being wanting to learn, but they still instilled in us great teachings and great excitement and joy for the world. I want to say Happy Father's Day to the coaches, right, Doc? To those who on the football field, the basketball field, the baseball diamond, the basketball court, that would still push us to be our best. I just want to say Happy Father's Day to all of those who were fathers who may have looked like mamas, who stood in the place to help mold us men and boys and girls into adults that we are today. Isn't it amazing that God can work in any situation to bring us forth? And we thank God most importantly for our Heavenly Father, who thought it not robbery that sent his only begotten Son, that we all might be saved. Happy Father's Day to you all. Deacon Boston Cherry.
Hear me? Okay. Good morning again. These are the announcements for the week. Dear Goodwill family, thank you so much for your kindness and consideration during my husband, Ernest Walters' homegoing service. My family and I will be forever grateful. Enclosed is a donation of love offering for $300 towards the heating system. Praying it helps out. Love, Hazel, and family. Dear Goodwill Baptist Church family, the phrase is simple, the words are few, but behind them is a whole lot of appreciation. With all my love, the Hazel Walters and family. This week, our Sunday school lesson is week 42. Colossians, Hearts United in Love. Focal verses is Colossians 2nd chapter, the 1st through the 15th verse. Join us on Tuesday at 6 p.m. with Deacon Esther Muldrow, and Thursday at 7 p.m. with Reverend Anne-Marie White. On Wednesday, June 19th at 7 p.m., we will have our prayer on Zoom. This is the last prayer service before the summer. We are asked to pray individually. We will resume prayer and the hymn study in September. Pastor Sears and congregation will be the guests of New Tabernacle Baptist Church, the Reverend Haram Ratliff, pastor, on Sunday, June 23rd at 3 p.m. in the celebration of their church anniversary. They will be preparing a meal before service from 1:30 p.m. to 2:45 p.m. Service will start right after dinner. Please go in support of our pastor. Thank you.
Amen. And the last of the announcements that I would like to articulate is that Brother Cooksby last week talked about the legal services that are provided for seniors. I also want to remind us that if you are not in New York State, if you are in Jersey, Vermont, Connecticut, wherever you are, Arizona, wherever you may be listening to us, that you can go onto your own state and do a Google search for free legal services for seniors in your state, and if it's available, it will pop up. Amen. And I believe they did put a link on our website as well. And then also, lastly, the announcement that we will be honoring and celebrating our esteemed pastor today during the offering. Because his birthday, he did not announce, is on Tuesday, the day before Juneteenth. Amen. So we want to make sure that we show some love, that the ushers will have the envelopes, and you can, if you raise your hand, they will get one for you, and there will be a basket. Amen, Deke. Amen. That we'll have a separate basket here for you to place that love offering to honor our pastor. Amen. And I failed to mention that there was one father figure that I failed to mention. We thank God for pastor fathers, amen, who help shepherd young interns, amen, into the ministry. So we want to make sure, thank you, Pops. Amen. All right. He ain't shake his head. You know, he hard. He ain't that loving. Like the next generation, we say I love you all the time. He just shake his head. Amen. 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 Trustee Davis will come as she brings the concerns of the church for prayer, followed by prayer from our pastor. Amen.
Good morning, Goodwill. Good morning, Goodwill. To our Pastor Sears and our Reverend Stephen Jones. This is our sick report for Sunday, June 16, 2024. We're asking prayer for Sister Gamble, who has been admitted into Albert Einstein Hospital. Reverend Stephen V. Jones is asking to continue prayer for his childhood friend, Theo Hawkins. Sister Joyce Rudolph is asking prayer as she will be having a procedure on tomorrow, Monday, June 17, 2024. Sister Elise Rollet is asking continued prayer for her cousin who is home from the hospital. Sister Knight is asking prayer as she is home not feeling well. Our bereavement. Deacon Renee and Deacon Tyrone Cherry and the Henley Willoughby family is asking prayer in the passing of her brother, their uncle Robert Bobby Henley, on Thursday, June 13, 2024. His services are as follow. Friday, June 28, 2024 at Goodwill Baptist Church, 624-44 Katona Park South, Bronx, New York, 10456. Wake and viewing from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Funeral services at 6 p.m. This ends our sick report and our bereavement. Please remember our sick, shut-in, aged, and bereaved with calls, cards, visits, and especially in your prayers. Please notify the church office if you're not well. Also, please let us know when you're up and out again. God bless.
As we come, we know that we all stand in the need of prayer. And we come saying, if it was not for the Lord, where would we be? We want to remember, in addition to what you've heard, I want to remember one of our virtual worshipers, Brother Moses Robertson, in Augusta, Georgia. And there are several others I encounter every day in the complex where I live. They'll say, pray for me. Remember me. I don't know your congregation. Your congregation doesn't know me, but just remember me. The Lord knows. Amen. And we all know of others, including ourselves. If we ever needed the Lord before, we need the Lord now. As we see, witness turmoil and chaos, same thing. Dangers seen and unseen. Little 12-year-old raped in the park. Bullets flying. We always need to talk with Jesus. Others talk to the God that they worship. We see a tremendous outpouring right outside of this building this morning. I've had a chance to tip to see who they're calling on. It almost looked like what Pharaoh said, come let us deal wisely with them, for they are more and mightier than we. But we can come here and have a little talk with Jesus. Amen? And nobody will think you're talking to yourself if you have a little talk with Jesus. I once was lost in sin, but Jesus took me in. And then a little light from heaven filled my soul. It bathed my heart in love, and it wrote my name above. And just a little talk with Jesus made me whole. Now let us have a little talk with Jesus. Let us tell him all about our troubles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. Now when you feel a little prayer wheel turning, then you'll know a little fire is burning. You will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Eternal God, our Father, we come once again thanking you for this beautiful sun-kissed Sunday morning. We thank you, Lord, for your loving kindness and your tender mercy. We came in, we ask you to search us and to cleanse us. Make us pure within. Touch us with your finger of love. Hear our humble cry. We are here on this day for every day is a day of thanksgiving. We thank you that you let us see the rising of the sun. We thank you. You let us make our way to your house of prayer once again. We thank you for your people. We thank you for Reverend Stephen Jones. Thank you for our diacon and our trustees, our congregational leaders, the ushers. We thank you for our director of music, Brother Corey Gray. We thank you for those who will lead us in singing. But most of all, we thank you for Jesus. Jesus. Oh, how sweet the name. Jesus, every day the same. Oh, if it was not for Jesus, we would have no hope of eternal salvation. So we come to say thank you, Jesus. Thank you for healing the sick. Thank you for comforting the bereaved. Thank you for being bread when we are hungry. Thank you for being a friend when we are all alone. Thank you for lifting us up when we're downcast. Oh, Lord, most of all, we thank you that we have a home prepared in the heavens where we'll live forevermore. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for those who are present in the sanctuary. And thank you for those who watch virtually around the world. Lord, I just want to thank you for the calls that I received on last week about your word. The words of encouragement. Thank you for those who said that they were touched and converted and saw you in a new light. Thank you. I've never seen it or heard it like that before. I thank you for using me as an instrument of your peace. And oh Lord, we pray this morning for the salvation of mankind. That the world would know in these chaotic times that Jesus is Lord of Lords. Jesus is our hope. Jesus is our rock. Jesus gives us eternal life. For he died on a cruel cross. But early on Sunday morning, he got up with power in his hands. Oh, Heavenly Father, help us to keep on serving you. Help us to keep on serving Jesus. Help us to keep on living for Jesus. A life that is true. Striving to please him in all that we do. Lord, somebody's lonely this morning. Somebody's destitute. Someone is striving aimlessly and painfully, trying to find the way. But oh Lord, help them to know that you are the way, the truth, and the life. Bless us all. We thank you. Thank you for allowing us to see another day. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Let us tell him all about our struggles. He will hear our faintest cry, and he will answer by and by. When you feel a little prayer wheel turning, then you'll know a little fire is burned. You will find a little talk with Jesus makes it right. Now before we proceed with our offering, Brother Cherry, will you come and greet us here and virtually, if there are visitors in the house, utter a word of welcome as only you can do. And then we'll be prepared to lift the offering.
Amen. Let the church say amen. Let the church say amen again. How about one more time to the glory of God? We certainly give honor to whom honor is due, tribute, and custom. For this is the day of the Lord, and we are to what? Rejoice and be glad in it. For we know that our God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. To all of our visiting guests, this is the point in our worship experience here at the Goodwill Baptist Church where we want to acknowledge you with a greeting that's fitted for a king or a queen, because we don't take it lightly that you actually came to worship with us in person or you're here with us virtually. And so we just want to just welcome you on behalf of the Goodwill Baptist Church. And I want to just say, if there are any guests in the church, and I do see two that I know very well, but if they don't stand, I'm still going to call them out. But you don't have to say anything because I know who you are. I've been knowing you since you were knee-high to a grasshopper, and I know the person that's by your side too. We ask you to just please stand so I can acknowledge you right now. Amen. So I want to take this opportunity on this Father's Day to welcome one that is really not a stranger here at Goodwill Baptist Church, because she was here for a very long time. Her sister was here for a very long time. Her grandfather, late grandfather, was here for a very long time. All her aunts and uncles were here for a very long time. Her daddy, who's sitting in the church, was here for a very long time. That's no other than our young sister, Lauren, who is no stranger to Goodwill Baptist Church, and Brother Cal is by her side. I remember you, Cal. You think I don't remember you? We are glad to have you, and they're here worshiping with her father, their dad, Deacon Lorenzo Thomas. Amen. You may be seated. And if there's anyone that is in our virtual audience, Goodwill Nation, I want you to welcome them too. Maybe it's your first time, your second time, your third time, your nth time. We want to welcome you too. Because as I said a moment ago, we're glad you came. We're so glad you came. We want to welcome you today as well. So on behalf of the esteemed pastor of this church, the Reverend Dr. Booker T. Sears Jr., on behalf of the assistant to the pastor, the Reverend Stephen B. Jones, on behalf of the diaconate ministry led by our very own Deacon John E. Peterson, on behalf of all the congregational leaders, all the ministerial staff, and the entire Goodwill Baptist Church, all the disciples of Goodwill Baptist Church, again, we want to say welcome. We're glad you came. We're so glad you came. And I can't say it any other way but very enthusiastically. We welcome you today. Amen.
Amen. Amen. If you don't feel welcome in this place, you might want to check your heartbeat and make sure it's beating. Amen. Amen. Let's prepare our hearts and minds as we have to render back unto God that for which God has given unto us. It's offering time, amen. Amen. And as I mentioned earlier, we celebrate God and what God has done through our tithes and offerings, and we make a little special sacrifice to give to our pastor for his born day on this coming Tuesday, June 18th, which will make number 85. Different basket for pastor, yes, amen. 85, right, Doc? That's what they say. He said, I mean, he don't remember. He remember everything else, but he don't remember that day specifically, amen. But they say 85, amen, amen. So we want to make sure that at least an 85, and if that's your gift, amen, we can give $1 for every year, amen, and then maybe some, because he said he gonna live to be 120, so maybe we just go ahead and give it to him already, amen. But for those of you who are virtually, you may give not only to the pastor, but we ask that you give to Goodwill. Everything is on the screen where you can get, and you can mail it if you choose to mail. Like my mom, she don't be giving online. She like to mail everything. 642-644, Crotona Park South, Bronx, New York, 10456 is the zip code. You may use the snail mail. Let me give you this also, is $book Sears, BOOKSEARS. For those of you who are online, is $book, BOOKSEARS. That is the cash app for our pastor if you would love to give an offering, particularly those who were so blessed by the sermon on last week. And we ask that you return unto that person to whom was a blessing unto you. Amen. We'll turn it over. This is for pastor on my left, your right, and church offering and tithes, my right, your left. And we'll turn it over to the ushers as they lead and direct you to the table, and to our director of music as he plays some nice giving music. Amen. And then we'll come back and pray. Let us pray. Oh God, we return unto you these tithes and offerings, God, that it may be used for the upbuilding of your kingdom here on earth. We thank you for every hand and heart that gave. And God, we ask you to bless those who did not but had the desire. And we thank you for those people who showed love to Pastor Sears. This we ask in the precious name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen, amen, and amen. For the dads out there and in virtual space, we have a special presentation for you that has been prepared, a visual presentation that our stream team will present. Following the Father's Day presentation, you will hear from the Goodwill Music Ministry, specifically soloist Brother Cooksey, who will lead us with the sermonic selection, followed by the Father's Day sermon from our one and only Pastor Booker T. Sears, Jr.
Who was there when I first opened up my eyes? And who was there to heal the hurt when I first learned to ride? And who never missed a game, celebrate me what a loss. Yes, my Father was. When adolescent years had come, who helped me understand, and when the winning point was scored, who in victory raised my hand, and when I hung my head in shame, was there to lift it up. Yes, my Father was. My heavenly Father has always been there for my earthly one was gone, yeah. He's taking care of me, and I only want to be just like him. Now that I'm a full-grown man who can wipe my tears away, and who's on the other end when I lift my heart to pray, and who's always by my side to help me make it through. Yes, my Father is my heavenly Father is. Who was there when I first opened up my eyes? And who was there to heal the hurt when I first learned to ride? And who never missed a game, celebrate me what a loss. Yes, my Father was. When adolescent years had come, who helped me understand, and when the winning point was scored, who in victory raised my hand, and when I hung my head in shame, was there to lift it up. Yes, my Well, my earthly one was gone, yeah. He's taking care of me, and I only want to be just like him. Now that I'm a full-grown man who can wipe my tears away, and who's on the other end when I lift my heart to pray, and who's always by my side to help me make it through. Yes, my Father is my heavenly Father is. Yes, He is. Yes, my Father is. Who was there when I first opened up my eyes?
If God said it, I believe it. Oh, I know He'll make it all right. Oh, if God said it, I believe it. Oh, I know He'll make it all right. Yeah, if God said it, I believe it. Oh, I know He'll make it all right. Yeah, if God said it, I believe it. Oh, I know He'll make it all right. Oh, trials come. He said in this life you will have some trials. He said sometimes your days will look like night. He said we've been made endure for a night. There'll be some nights your pillow's wet with tears. There'll be some times you feel so all alone. I tell you, trials will come on this Christian journey. Sickness and pain will take all over your body. Oh, but if you hold out, the Lord said He would make you strong, yeah. All your tests will be your testimony. I said all your tests will be your testimony. Oh, He'll make you strong. Weeping may endure. Oh, I know He'll make it all right. Oh, if God has said it, if I let this, can I get a witness? He'll make it all right. Can I get a witness? And He made it all right. Did He bless your soul? Did He make you whole? Did He heal your body? Food on your table? I know He's able. He'll make it all right. He'll make it all right. He'll make it all right. If you believe, He'll make it all right. If you believe, He'll make it all right. He promised me. He promised me. He promised me. If I just hold out, if I can hold out, He'll make it all right. 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 Oh, I know he'll make it all right. Yes, I know he'll make it all right. Oh, do you know he'll make it all right? Say, amen. It might not be all right at the moment. We're glad. Thank you, Brother Cooksey, for letting us know he'll make it all right. That falls in line where the Lord has led me today. First, greetings and peace from God to everyone here in the sanctuary and those who are virtual. Grace and peace be unto you from God our Father and from Jesus, who is the Christ. We've been blessed, better than blessed. And because God has let us see another day. You ought to say amen. Recognizing our assistant to the pastor, the Reverend Stephen B. Jones, and Sister Barbara Gray called me. You know, she works for the Election Commission, and I think you're having early voting now. Started today. And she had to be present at the post of duty. Understand that? I was the deputy director of the Election Commission for Northwestern South Carolina for about 10 years. Didn't have early voting in those days. At least you didn't have it on Sunday. Amen. And it was rough
those days because my pigmentation of skin put me under suspect. Certain people coming to vote absentee, it wasn't so sure that a person of my color was going to put the ballot in the right place. But I got used to that. Because when I was in banking, a gentleman came in one morning and saw me counting money. I think I mentioned that in 3 churches. We took their money out of the bank because someone of my color was not supposed to be counting money. Man, so we thank God we made all of these strides. But it looks now like we're on a slippery slope. It seems like a half a step forward and another step backwards. But God, I want to report to you this morning that God is still in control. He's still in control. Today I venture on a trek that maybe many would not attempt to do. There are a lot of characters in the Bible, male and female, but basically it's the Old and the New Testament. It trends around being patriarchal. The Old Testament, you hear of Adam and Eve, you hear of Noah and his family, you hear of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You hear Sarah and Rebecca and Leah, etc. For the most part, it's patriarchal. Man, male. I want to reason this morning on this Father's Day. Dad trusting God in dangerous times. Dad trusting God in dangerous times. It's in Psalms that was read earlier, the Psalms, chapter 3, and verses 3 and 4. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory, and the one who lifts up my head. I cry aloud to the Lord, and he answers me from his holy hill. Amen. Psalm 3, verses 3 and 4. Dad, trust in God in dangerous times. This psalm is written by David. Now let me say this. Out of all the characters in the Holy Writ, David may be chosen less likely to be preached about on Father's Day. Y'all gonna pray with me? David, the least of Jesse's sons, surely when the prophet went to Jesse's house, Deacon Peterson, to select a king, he saw one that was tall and said, surely this must be the one. He's like Saul. The word said Saul was head and shoulders above all the other men of it, meaning that he was LeBron, Shaq. Was that tall fella played for the Denver Nuggets? Yeah, what won the championship last year. But in other words, he was tall. Dr. Preston Washington, the late Dr. Preston Washington, preached a sermon here many, many years ago in the association. And the subject was he was tall, and that's all. David calls on God for protection and acknowledges that he is his strength and protector. He's living in dangerous times. Now, like I said, David is least likely to be preached about on Father's Day. What was his dilemma? Well, his own son had turned most of the kingdom against him and had formed a formidable army to unseat his own daddy. What happened? Well, David, the conquering hero, we first hear of him when he defeats the giant Goliath. And then David had conquest after conquest. So much so that Saul, who sent him into battle, became jealous and enraged and tried to wipe him out. Y'all gonna pray? And David won battle after battle. He brought the Ark of the Covenant back, which was the presence of God. He went into battle, and when he returned, they were shouting, Saul has killed his thousands, and David has killed his tens of thousands. Saul got jealous. He said, wait a minute. I'm the king. And they crediting me with thousands, crediting David with tens of thousands. Well, David was the conquering hero. And then he became king. Now, maybe the constant battle, they were not shooting these rifles with these bump stops that the Supreme Court said they're okay to use now. God forbid when the next mass shooting will take place. I don't want to get y'all in trouble. It's a shame. Clarence Thomas was right. The majority opinion. Won't be long. There'll be another mass shooting of innocent people because this country is a gun society. Y'all praying? And so David, being obedient, but first of all, David was chosen by God. Secondly, David was a great warrior. Thirdly, David was chosen as king. God put him there. He conquered and conquered. War was brutal. What you preaching about that on Father's Day? But in this third psalm, he is praying because he's in fear of his life from his own son. I don't have time to go all the way through it, but y'all read 2 Samuel chapter 13 and following. I'll just tell a part of the story. David, I said, was not somebody to preach about on Father's Day. The best research, could be more, but David had 8 wives, about 18 children. Everywhere he went and conquered. See, you got Jones really need to be preaching because he is in the synagogue. You see, that was Old Testament times. And whenever a conquering hero went into battle and won, he brought home the spoils of victory. If it was today and somebody attacked, they would go march. If they attacked here, they would go marching back home with your 55-inch television, your refrigerator, your new car, your money, your daughters, your wives, and even you. Now, it's a profane word. We put it in the gutter. But it was kings came marching back, Jones, in a parade. They had the things they had taken, the silver, the gold, everything that they could loot. They called it booty. B-O-O-T-Y. Now y'all say in the church. Spoils of victory. And David was a conquering conqueror. And finally he was ascended to the throne. In the midst of that, he had a firstborn son, believed by Abigail. If it's not, y'all text me right quick and tell me. But his name was Amnon. And David also had a son by the name of Absalom. Absalom was a stud. Absalom was a poster boy. He was the most handsome man in the kingdom. He had flowing dreadlocks, beautiful hair. Absalom was probably the desire of every woman's heart in the kingdom. But a tragedy happened. Y'all know the story. You've been in Sunday school, touched it. Amnon had sexual desires for Tamar. Don't y'all get quiet. Now, Tamar was his half-sister. He convinced one of his cousins to help him pretend that he was sick. And David consented, not knowing it was a ruse. And Amnon had passion for his half-sister. He pretended to be sick. She came to help him. When she got in the room, he put the help out. And he raped his half-sister. Then, when he finished, he was through with her. Now she's shamed, defiled. She has been taken advantage of. Absalom found out about it, became angry, because Absalom and Tamar were full brothers and sisters. His half-brother had raped his sister. We don't know. Some expositors say, some don't say. But the bottom line is you don't read anywhere where David did anything about it. Was Dad asleep on the job? Was Dad not paying attention to what was going on in his family? Absalom hated his father. You know, sad to say that in our culture, African American culture is, for the most part, matriarchal. Mama. You don't hear anybody that's going to touchdown talking about, hello, Dad. It's always, hi, Mom. Most other cultures are patriarchal. The Jews, the Muslims, the East Indians, the Asians. The women walk behind, you see it. The men. They don't sit together in certain worships. But African American culture is matriarchal. Here I go. we were not like that in Africa. Because Africa, back in antiquity, was a patriarchal society. Y'all get some good sleep today. But even since Juneteenth on June 19, 1865, for the most part, African-American culture, is more matriarchal than it is patriarchal. And I don't say that with any disgust. It's just true. Mama's all right. Daddy no good. That's why we don't have such turnouts and so forth for dad, because a close to a majority of us who were brought here on slave boats were raised in matriarchal homes. Big Mama. Big Mama knew it, ain't Lucy. Cousin Annie Mae. Ain't Sweet. And many are single moms. Dad's nowhere to be found. I was having a hole this morning. David, where was he? He was ready to go against Goliath. He killed Philistines and then circumcised their dead bodies. But when this horrible thing happened in his own house, he seems to be MIA, missing in action. Absalom, the handsome, flowing locks of hair, desire of every available heart, female. He turned on his daddy. And, you know, if you have an Achilles heel, if you have a weakness, those who don't like it will soon find it out, and they'll use it. Y'all don't pray? They'll use it. Amen. Some folk, like a broken, they'll tell it, especially if they don't like it. And Absalom pretty much hated his daddy. So he knew his daddy's weakness. Because he was absent. Absent dads can cause problems. They can cause emotional problems. They can cause financial problems. They can cause divisiveness. It's not fussing dads, it's painting the picture. But Absalom saw that David was not stepping up to his duties. We don't know where he was. We know he was lounging around when he saw Bathsheba taking a sun bath. And he brought her to himself, got her pregnant, sent for her husband to come home to cover it up. And when he didn't, he sent him back to war and got him killed. Then he married her, but the word said that this thing he did displeased the Lord. The baby passed away. Then David moved on to the king's castle. But people were coming from all around the nation to have their legal issues addressed. But they had to go back home empty-handed. Oh, when Agent Orange had to go to court, the judge was there before he got there. Amen. But David, people would come, Brother Larry, all the way from Demopolis to Birmingham and have to go back home empty-handed. Yes, sir. They go all the way, walk from Bowman to Orangeburg and have to go back home empty-handed. And Absalom saw this and saw an opening. And he said, if you make me king, you don't have to be doing all of this. You'll get justice. You won't have to come here and waste time. And so, to sum it up, he stole the hearts of the men from his dad. Stole them. Formed an army. If you sleep on the job, if you're not where you ought to be when you ought to be, that gives rise to the enemy. Amen. Dad, don't you worry about what's going on. I ain't fussing with that. I'm just saying, if you ain't around, you don't know what may abound. So Absalom stole the hearts of the people and formed an army. And David had to run. He had to hide. Absalom set fields on fire. David was afraid of his own son. But in many instances, he brought it on himself. Because when people have issues and they need addressed, when they are hurt and they need comforted when they have grievances and they need to be relieved, and the one that can do it is neglecting to do it, it brings anger. It brings dismay. It brings disgust. And so Absalom formed David from Milani against his own daddy. Said, if you make me king, I'll see that your issues are handled. But there was Joab, David's right-hand man, who kept most of the forces together. Y'all pray with me. It's a tough father they were. And they went into battle, and David was so afraid he ran himself and hid. Now, David, don't I say he was negligent in his office. The office God had put him in, the throne that God had ascended him to. He didn't address the abuse and assault of his own daughter. Didn't chastise his son. Where was he? Where was he? It does not tell us. But war broke out. Here's the one thing Absalom forgot. Here's one thing we sometimes forget. David was put there by God. He was put there. David was chosen. David was anointed by God. And what God puts in place, man cannot remove. What God puts together, man can't take it apart. What God intends is what will happen. Absalom forgot. Yeah, David had 3 strikes, 2 or 3 strikes against him. He the way he was, beat didn't do anything about it. He was not serving the kingdom either. So the war broke out. David was running for his life. But Absalom, feeling his chariots, and while they were out in battle, Joab's forces were pressing on, and Absalom tried to run to get away, and he had this beautiful hair, these beautiful dreadlocks. He was the most handsome man in the country. But as he was riding, he went under an oak tree, and the branches caught his hair. The horse kept going, and Absalom was hanging by his hair. Joab came along and saw him and thrust a spear into his side and killed him. David wept over the death of Absalom. He was almost angry with those who killed him. I don't know what that boy had on his daddy. But here's what does all of this, why did you bring all this up? Here's the thing. David did not properly handle the rape of his daughter by his son. David didn't give justice to those who sold it. But David was perfect. David was perfect. Although we know he's not perfect. The song we sing early in the service, he Lord, except that's he was trapped in the first song. See if I don't see it, but he's not saying a song, Lord, you find it. I mean, Lord, search me, you'll find something. Ain't no if you find anything. When you find it, get it out and say to me, I want you right. I want you to say, I want you whole. And so, saga, that's what he says. Dads, always alert. Dads, always action. The wrongdoing, edge list. Dads, always get the post of duty. Not do it. Sometimes in turn, don't be brought into the world against you. Or even mention you. Or even think about you. But, Corey had something up. I don't know that. He had something about you being called preacher the other day. He took no action when his own daughter was defiled. Look at David. Here God placed him, knowing he was not perfect, but he still was a man. I thought, oh, you know what I mean? You know, I don't mess up. You know, grace, no cheap grace, no covenant religion. But one of the grace of Jesus, great, and all the sins. David, listen, he gave him the Father of the Year award. No, but Jesus came down through the Davidic line. One day, the Savior, Jesus Christ, God, like that. How much inspiration we had? We need the 23rd song. But David was a man, never know man. Somebody say he was in his youthful days, and he could have been too old with all those children later on. Unless he was something that we don't know now. But he prays because he's afraid. God in spite of have greater use for him. Oh, not a good day. No. We hear him praying in this dangerous time, and this same David wept over the loss of his son, his handsome son. But then we hear later on the same David. Same created in me. Was it because of that? Created in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Here is the lesson. Man, to put across. And that is this. There's somebody probably saying right in here. They did not have a good relationship with your father. There's someone don't even want to remember. Have no communication. But just remember, God created him. In order, if you have that kind of experience, your father may be long gone. Forgive him. Forgive him. Forgive him. He might have left you and mama and 5 children. Never gave you a crumb of bread and you had to scrap it along on your own. Forgive him. Well, I can't do that. Well, if I want to be forgiven, I got to forgive. If I want God to forgive me, if I want God to forgive me, I've got to forgive others and then let it go. God had David in his hands. And I'm glad, even after all of that, David could cry out, the Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Yes, we have in our world deadbeat dads. Yes, we've had those who've been abusive. We've had those who refuse to support as they should. And you say, well, the legal system takes care of that. But thank God, God, in spite of wickedness, will deliver you. God, in spite of trials and tribulations, will deliver us. And so, Absalom was the ultimate loser. Because even if his daddy didn't act appropriately as he should, it was not his job. David God's choice. Let God handle situations. Oh, we've got this election coming up and it's going back and forth. Now I say, let the Lord handle it. It looked like there is no peace on earth. The writer said, and in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said. For hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. And then it says, but then peal the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead. God is not dead. Not doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right will fail. Of peace on earth, goodwill to men. But I'm glad to report to you that I go to seek. Earthly fathers sometimes may fail. They may be asleep on the job. But I'm so glad that we have a heavenly Father. And Jesus taught us to pray, our Father. He didn't ask us to pray to David. He didn't ask us to pray to Jeremiah or Ezekiel. He didn't ask us to pray to Ruth or Rebecca. He didn't ask us to pray to Abraham or Isaac. But he said, when you pray, say, our Father, our Father, our Father who art in heaven, our Father who has never lost a battle, our Father who feeds us when we are hungry, our Father who embraces us when we are left all alone, our Father who fights our battles and makes our enemies our footstool, our Father who sent his only begotten Son to live among us and then to suffer, bleed, and die, our Father who got him up early on Sunday morning, our Father who lifted him on board a cloud and he went back home to be with his Father. That same Father when earthly fathers fail, that same God when government is corrupt, that same Father when the Supreme Court is unjust, the same Father when the Senate, Lord have mercy, is sinful, that same Father when Congress is crazy, that same Father will watch over us. I'm glad for my heavenly Father. I'm glad I had a good earthly Father. And I'm glad that one day, if I keep on trusting in him, I'll see him face to face. Father, I stretch my hands to thee. No other help I know. If thou withdraw thyself from me, oh, whether shall I go? Earthly fathers made it separate themselves from us. And our heavenly Father watches over us all night, all day, when we're weak, when we're strong, when we're down, when we're out, when we're in bereavement, and when we're sick. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Our Father is not an absentee Father. Our Father is not a derelict Father. Our Father is a loving Father. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for loving us so much that you sent your Son to save us from our sin. Loved us so much that when we ask you to forgive us, you forgive us as though we've never sinned. Oh, Lord, I pray that those who had bad experiences with earthly Father will find the fortitude to say, I forgive you. And Lord, have mercy. You'll make life sweeter. You'll make the way brighter. I thank you, Lord, that if you, Lord, have mercy, David in his derelict duty, David in his absenteeism, David, Lord, have mercy, in his inactivity, you touched him and he prayed and asked you to forgive him, and you forgave him. And I thank you, Lord, that if you forgave him, you can forgive me. Thank you, Lord, for your forgiving love. Thank you, Lord, that you broke our chain. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for watching over us. Thank you, Father, for waking us up this morning. Thank you, Lord, for feeding us when we were hungry. Thank you, Lord, and Lord, for making us right when we were wrong. Thank you, Lord, for soothing us when we were mistreated. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Again, we thank you for earthly Father. We thank you for those who knew you in the free pardon of their sins. And Lord, we ask you to have mercy on those who fell asleep on the job. Help us to forgive them. And oh Lord, thank you, Lord, for letting us be alive. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. You got it under control. Thank you that David realized the Lord is my light and my salvation. Thank you, Lord, that David repented, created me a clean heart and renewed a right spirit within me. Oh, Lord, I stand here as a father this morning, and when I've been buried, forgive me. Oh, Lord, I've been absent, forgive me. Oh, Heavenly Father, oh, Lord, if I've been inattentive, forgive me. If I've neglected, forgive me. Oh, Father, I stretch my hands to you. Hear me, Lord. Help me, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for godly fathers. Thank you, Lord, for those who stayed awake on the job. Thank you, Lord, for those who stepped in action. And oh, Lord, have mercy. Change those who did not and make them as bright shining stars. You are able. You are able. You are able. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. You see, sometimes, let me take it slow. Sometimes, you know, God moves in a mysterious way. A rascal like David, couldn't God have chosen somebody better? David, God knew him. If God can raise David to write 23rd Psalm that we all love, if God can inspire David to write, the Lord is my light and my salvation, if God can take Saul, a persecutor and a murderer, have him to declare your unsearchable riches. God can do that. God can take Booker T. Sears Jr., a rebel boy, and let him preach for 63 years. God can change anybody. But my lesson to Absalom, I know your daddy did wrong. I know your daddy was asleep on the job. But he was God's man. And God would handle him, not you. David was God's anointed, wretched as he was. And his only begotten son came through the house and lineage of David. Glory, that's why I don't be worrying about it. Said the other day about it. Women, children. You know, the God we serve can prepare them all. But it's up to us to accept what God has done and what God is doing. Tough road to hold today. David ain't who you preach about on Father's Day. But it shows you what God can do. He can make a good situation come out of a bad situation. Grace will set the guilty free. Law will condemn the innocent to death. And I thank God that he can use whomever he chooses to bring glory to his name and salvation to the world. Amen. Thank you for your time. I trust in God wherever I may be, upon the land or on the rolling sea. Though come what may. It was dark for David in that third song. From day to day, my heavenly Father watches over me. Won't you stand? I trust in God. Though in the lion's den, I'll trust in even in the prison pen, through flood or flame, through praise or blame, my heavenly Father watches over me. Is there somebody here today that wants to come to the Heavenly Father? He makes the rose an object of his care. He guides thee, go through the pathless air, and surely he, Lord, remembers me. My heavenly Father watches over me. I trust in God. I know he cares for me. On mountain peak or on the rolling sea, though billows roll, God keep my soul. My heavenly Father watches over me. And now unto him, oh, thank you so much for your patience and for your love and for allowing me to be around here 39 going into 40 years. Sometimes maybe sleep on the job. Sometimes maybe inactive when I should have been active. Or irresponsible maybe when I should have been responsible. But I struggle and strive daily to fulfill what God has called me to do. And I ask him every day to search me, O God, and know my ways. Try me and know my thoughts so that I can be of service to his kingdom. Thank you for your presence. And now unto him who is able to keep us all from falling and present us faultless before the presence of his kingdom with exceeding great joy, to the only wise God our Savior. To him be glory and majesty, dominion and power, both now and ever. The church Oh, and happy Father's Day to everybody. All of it. There's bread downstairs, bread of heaven. Happy Father's Day to you, Brother Bonnie. Yes, 1 second. Let me out of